Well, previous shows we've discussed how really they wanted to dramatize the events that happened at the Capitol, make them a lot more dramatic than what they were. That's what you hear they call them a coup, siege, insurrection, though virtually all of them were unarmed. And they walked in, it was grandmas and dude bros walking in single file line between velvet rope. But hey, apparently that is an insurrection. But you need to understand why they use that type of language when they define these types of people, or generally people that are, which is, of course, they're going to blur the lines. They say that they're Trump supporters. They talk about these little movements. We covered, I forget what his name was, the former CIA guy that is working at, what was he talking to MSNBC? And he mentioned libertarians as well, talking about these little sort of cells, right, that are gathering, freedom cells, if you will, that are like gathering. And he was like, this is kind of like what we see overseas, obviously referring to terrorist groups. And that's been the sort of thing, is that they want to conflate those types of people that are anti-government, or at least find something wrong with the current setup. They say it's a threat to our democracy, which of course gives you a compliment as far as I'm concerned. But you need to understand why they're using that sort of dramatic language. It's because what it does is it'll authorize anything that they will do to you. This is why they called for a long time people Nazis and white supremacists and fascist, all these other terms. It's not because they really think that that's what they are. These guys are stupid. They don't, and some of them are actually smart enough to understand that they don't know what those terms means, but they know that they're objectively bad and that the general public will see them as bad. So what they want to do is legitimize anything that they're going to do. We have an opinion piece that I want to go through real quick, which highlights exactly that. It's an opinion piece that was published by the Washington Examiner. Really gives you some insight on how these guys feel about you. It says, we defeated Al-Qaeda and can do the same for the fascist thugs who attacked our democracy last month. Again, it's just so hilarious that when people kick their feet up on Nancy Pelosi's desk at the cathedral that houses all those criminals, they make it seem like you're not going at the criminals, you're going at us, right? So they use terms like our democracy. So they were attacking us, right? The public. Like, no, that didn't have nothing to do with me. I don't even fuck with y'all like that. It ain't got nothing to do with me. Ain't got nothing to do with me. I don't know y'all like that. I don't care for y'all like that. Any other time you'll be pushing for signing legislation that's advocating for aggression upon peaceful people. I have no desire to treat you as if you and me are the same. We're not the same. So when they went at you, that's who they went at. They went at you. They didn't go at us. Ain't no us. But that's how they word it, because, you know, that may, you burn down entire blocks, city to city, all across the damn country. Hell, and in some cases it was international, but all across the country, you can burn down your own neighborhood. The store you shop at, the store you work at, the store you own. And never was it assumed that you were attacking them. You were never attacking other people. You were never attacking your neighbors. It's only until Nancy Pelosi got some papers flipped on her desk. That's when you started attacking the other people. But they said, but only, and this is perhaps the most important thing, but if only we take similar hard measures against the enemy within. So they're labeling, of course, these guys as the terrorists. And if you know how foreign policy, America's deadly foreign policy is, just the fact that someone would say, approve of that nonetheless, but certainly approve of that even more so to the people that are living here, really goes to show how they feel about you. But the actual thing itself, see what this crackhead had to say. This is written by Kevin Carroll. It says domestic terrorism is a phenomenon formerly associated with left-wing groups such as Weather Underground, Black Liberation Army, and Puerto Rican FLN separatists, has returned with blood in its eyes and on its hand. We saw 5 dead in the January 6th attempted coup. It's not what it was. We saw possible assassination plots against the former Vice President Mike Pence and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. We saw coercion. It's just funny how the entire state is backed by that. Like, fundamentally, that's what they operate with, is coercion. And for them to like use that term when other people take it to their house and just kind of ruffle some feathers, that's what they call it. coercion designed to prevent certification of President Biden's electoral college victory. We now see the Capitol necessarily secured behind a razor wire, which is, again, over dramatic. But we also see some Republican members of Congress trying to sneak guns onto the House floor. One has even called for violence. It is time. Let's see what this is that they're referring to. Pelosi denounces GOP leaders over lawmakers. What are they talking about? Oh, they talking about Green. It's funny that these guys are reaching. All right, Democrats such as Attorney General designate Merrick Garland and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer should use their executive and legislative power over the next 23 months to do the following 5 important things. Okay, so here we go. More just authoritarianism, bringing the heaviest felony charges possible on as many participants in the insurrection as Justice Department can identify. So they want to hunt those people down, much like they did in September 11th, or attempt to do that. Further prosecution is possible under federal felony in possession of a firearm statute, which virtually none of them had firearms, so that wouldn't even go anywhere. Second, make fire and police departments that receive federal grants have their members sign commitments to not engage in acts to overthrow the government. So they want to make sure that you pledge allegiance to the state. I mean, again, this is what I say about these institutions anyway. Prosecute any other subsequently violate their oath. So their oath is to the state. That's what they're saying. We could also cut or suspend federal funding to departments that fail to introduce these measures. How about we just cut all federal funding? I think that sounds like a fantastic idea. Doesn't even matter. It's what we're doing to universities that receive federal grant money and then promise to do to the contrary, allow communist Chinese to walk off with export-controlled intellectual property paid for by American taxpayers. How about we just get rid of the federal grants and the money just stays in the hands of the people that you stole it from? Doesn't matter what the reasoning is. I think that's a fantastic idea. Third, do not worry about Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. Rather than ban extremist chatter through government censorship or private deplatforming, use radical chat rooms and honeypots as FBI-led oh my God. FBI-led Joint Terrorism Task Force is done with violent, radicalized Islamists since 2001. We need to dry out those of our fellow citizens who are willing to attack our nation. Like, again, they keep discussing this as if this is a collective effort and they're attacking you and me. Fourth, use the supremacy of the federal law to ban militias beyond the National Guard. Like, do y'all understand what this guy is saying? He wants everybody to be ruled with an iron fist by way of the state. God forbid anybody say, you know what, we don't want to be a part of this institution. There's no room for any armed forces not answerable to the law. Like, unbelievable. Add domestic terrorism as a predicate to the material support for terrorism statute. Includes civil liability provisions. This will provide new means of successful prosecutions and gradually increase deterrence of any domestic terrorists. So basically, this guy wants to criminalize people that had anything to do with it, which they're, of course, already going to do. But it's the conflation right here that we see of like terrorism. And, of course, what they want to use, which is what the government has done historically, use an event to then justify giving them more power, doing more sort of authoritarian things, in which it doesn't go through anything other than themselves, and then they rule you with an iron fist. But just so how quickly these guys are willing to deem you as just an enemy of the state, which is, I mean, again, that's, I guess, you're giving me props when you say that. See, the positive thing about all this entire scenario is that a lot of these they're telling on themselves, and this is what the whole Trump phenomena and everything really that happened over the past 4 years, and especially what had happened right before the inauguration with the whole Capitol thing. You're seeing how just these people demand allegiance. When I talk about, and they're gonna be mildly successful with what it is that they want to do. So he's not talking completely out of his behind. But you see how when something threatens their power, these guys are very authoritarian, no matter how much they pretend to hate fascism and all that other stuff. And then, that's just words, right? It doesn't mean anything because they don't know what those terms mean, especially when you have guys that are openly wanting to hijack factories to use them for the reasons that they want to use them for, which is literal fascism because that's a merge of corporate and state. But again, let's not have the definitions get in the way of these guys. But they will so quickly deem anybody that is essentially anti them because they're power hungry people. And this is why I say that I think a peaceful separation is the best type of case scenario that we can get from this, because these people plan to rule you with an iron fist. They're power hungry, man. And this is why this whole pipe dream of trying to get the right people in office is just that. I think what needs to happen is we need to have ramped up conversations about completely demolishing the federal government. And I'm not joking. Like, I'm not being dramatic in the sense that I'm just talking, just saying that. No, I am dead serious. The federal government is a strong powerhouse of an institution that rules over an entire geographical area with 300-something million people that differ so much culturally, and it's getting people in trouble, man. And it's just going to continue to get worse. There's no sense in sharing a government with people that want you dead, because what's happening is, as you're seeing, they want control of the power, and then they will inevitably use that power to suppress you. So it's not about getting the right folks in office. It needs to be completely removed. And if you want to have some sort of defense pact, mutual defense for the time being, okay, give you that. You do not need a federal government facilitating that. That is not necessary. So, as I have been saying for the longest, decentralization is the key, because this is heading in a direction where they're going to criminalize virtually anybody that is anti-government. They want full control. That's what they want. And the federal government allows them to do that. So it needs to be less talk about trying to get the right people to wield the ring of power. And the power needs to be, the ring rather, needs to be tossed in the pit of fire. Simple as that. And it only sounds unrealistic until it doesn't sound unrealistic. I don't want anybody talking to me about unrealistic. When dude bros can take on the damn stock market, I'm not trying to hear anything about what people in mass cannot do, right? Screw that. If the talks ramp up, it sounds less unrealistic, much like Brexit. Brexit, for years, they said nothing like that would ever happen, and then it happened. Took a while, but it happened. See, I'm not saying this simply because I'm anti-government, because of course that is the more libertarian position of decentralization. But I'm seeing where this country is going. I'm seeing how this rhetoric is ramping up, where people want to criminalize folks that really are out of step as far as they are concerned. And this does nothing but ramp up, and this creates more and more tension. And this is why the power or rather the power that the state has, in this case the federal government, it's constantly being fought for. And as people are always at odds, because they fear in the event that the enemy, which lives in their own country, but the enemy gets possession of the power. Why are we having that institution be a thing? It makes no sense. Other than it's just a status quo that is being perpetuated. It's this idea that secessionism or decentralization equals civil war. It equals violence, which, again, your most recent example of that was not a violent separation, which is what Brexit was. Call it what you want, but that's what the indoctrination camps do. They're very successful in doing that. They put you in those camps known as public education, right? And they taught you to conflate that. And this is why every time you bring up decentralization, they say, well, that didn't work so good last time. First of all, why are we controlled by the past? I don't know. But we're living in a completely different era, a technological era, where information spreads faster than what it far did back then, and we're operating on a completely different premises here. Decentralization is the key, because if we don't get it, the bull crap that you try to pin on guys like myself who are advocating for decentralization, dissolving of the federal government, or secession of individual states, or whatever it is, decentralization could come in many different forms, and I support it. But regardless, what you're going to get is if we keep going in this direction, is actually aiding in the Civil War. Because this can't keep up. Y'all do understand this. This can't keep up. We are heading in that direction. So what you fear is going to come true, but it's becoming that because it's the power structure that exists. That is the fundamental problem. Until people realize this, well, we're going to be going in circles.